Morning, physicsy people. Hopefully, we're working through stuff. We should have already taken the quiz over simple harmonic motion on Moodle. So the idea here would be that this should be Thursday, whatever Thursday is going to be, the 25th, I think, 26th, 26th, Thursday the 26th. We'll start sound waves. Won't be able to do all the labs and that kind of stuff, but we'll try and hopefully I can find some good PhET simulations and those sorts of things. But we'll go ahead and go with some sound wave stuff. Right, so sound, I should move this guy over here. That would be more out of the way. Right, so sound in nature, right, is pretty quiet, used for survival, communication. And so our ears have developed to maximize our ability to hear quiet things and to notice little bits of stuff and whatever. But the way our world is today, it's loud, there's constant sound, and even normal everyday activities is loud enough to damage hearing because our ears are not evolved to handle the noise volumes that we experience today. So you're probably already experiencing some hearing loss. I'll put a link so you can see what your hearing range is, like what frequencies you can hear and stuff. I know I cannot hear what high school kids can hear, and I don't like cram in AirPods and crank it up all the time and that kind of stuff. But it is something to keep in mind that our ears have not evolved to hear sound the way we typically do, right? It's also pretty big in psychology. If you're interested in psychology stuff, it can really influence mood and desire to belong and that kind of, right? It can really affect behaviors quite a bit too. We're not going to focus on the psychological aspects of it and stuff, but they're actually pretty interesting. All right, so this is chapter 12. I don't think that's right. I think I need to update that. I don't think that's chapter 12. I don't have a book right next to me, but whatever. I'll post what chapter it is. Right. So sound is vibrations, right? It's produced by a vibration of a material. So if I take a little tuning fork, right, it causes vibrations. So let's go ahead and lower this down so we can actually see the vibrations. I don't know if you can see that well enough. All right, hopefully you can see the screen there a little bit. I'll try a different one that might vibrate a little differently. You might be able to hear that. All right, so when you put it into the water, it dampens its ability to vibrate back and forth. So it stops it. Hopefully you're able to see the water splash around there a little bit, right? But it makes actual waves, right? It's a compression wave. When you look at like a car stereo speaker, what it literally does is it shoves it out and then pulls it back. And so you get a wave front of air moving through there. We'll see some demo type stuff with that later on. You can do some neat things with that. Or simulations of that and that kind of stuff too, right? But you can see down here, right, as the tuning fork pushes towards, it makes an area of high pressure, and then as it pulls back, it makes an area of low pressure, and so you get this, you get these pressure waves coming through there, right? They're a compression wave made by moving something forward in the air and then something backwards in the air, or in your vocal cords, right? They pinch together and block the air, and then they let some air come through, and they pinch together and block the air, right? And that's how we make sound. Pitch is what we view sound as, right? So if we have a high pitch, that's going to be a high frequency. If we have a low pitch, that's going to be a low frequency. The material that you use obviously is going to affect that, and then how it moves. If we think about these in terms of simple harmonic motion, these are kind of like a pendulum, right? So the way they move is a lot like a pendulum. And since this has a much longer length, that's going to vibrate slower, right? So it's going to have a lower tone. Right, you can hear that nice low tone. This one has a much shorter fork, part of the tuning fork, right? So it's going to vibrate back and forth faster, right? So it goes at a much higher frequency. And then if we grab one of the middle-y type ones, if we grab one of these middle type ones, all right, that one's kind of in between those two. Right, so that's the pitch there, right? It's a vibration back and forth. I've even got this cool resonance chamber. If we look at this resonance chamber, this is a hollow tube, right? You can see through the tube. I look through there, right? You can see me there, right? So it's a hollow tube. And then I've got a tuning fork, and they made the tuning fork the same size as the resonance chamber. So if I ping this and get it vibrating, it can cause resonance through there, right? So it's like an echo chamber kind of thing. It causes this thing to vibrate, which causes these to vibrate. And since they're much larger, it makes it louder. I'll try and move stuff away a little bit and move the microphone here in front so you can kind of see what I'm doing here. But let's see, move this back just a little bit. I don't know how well that's coming through on the microphone, but it's kind of a cool little thing, right? Where you can cause one thing to vibrate by having another thing vibrate, right? So the resonance chamber there, and pitch is just kind of how our ears understand that frequency. So when things that are a higher pitch, they are at a higher frequency. So it kind of makes a lot of sense that when you see usually, somebody with a really high pitched voice is a little tiny girl type person or a smaller guy or whatever. They're going to have smaller vocal cords. So that's going to make a higher pitched thing. When you hear like a James Earl Jones and you see it's a bigger guy and stuff like that, that kind of makes sense. There's more larger room in the voice box and that kind of stuff, right? So what we can hear, infrasonic is just below what we can hear is 20 hertz. Ultrasonic is above 20,000 hertz. Now that's a range. I'm going to leave a link so you can go and click on it and actually move it around yourself and hear what you can hear. Most people can start to actually hear closer to like 100 or 200 hertz. And then I know I drop out around, I think it's about 12 to 13,000 hertz. I'm not able to hear anymore. So I'm not sure where yours will drop out. The lower yours are dropping out, the more damage you're doing to your ears. So if you're able to hear clear up to close to 20,000 hertz, then you're not doing too much damage to your ears. If they're already down at like 18 years old, if they're already down at like 15, 16,000, you might want to rethink how you listen to music and how loud you play your car stereo and stuff, because that doesn't come back. Right. Anyway, then there's also Sonic, which is a popular hedgehog in a game where he collects rings, and they've recently made a movie about him too. That has nothing to do with infrasonic or ultrasonic or anything like that, right? Ultrasonic things you can take pictures with, right? I know some people, if you've been injured, right? The trainers have the ultrasound thing. They did that on my shoulder one time. They send ultrasound waves, and those are a pressure wave, so they can cause things to move around. They can send back pictures and that kind of stuff. So here's a little picture of a baby. You can produce images with those, and this happens to be a pretty ugly baby, but right, you can do all kinds of stuff with ultrasound waves. We can't hear those, but we can produce images with them and that kind of stuff, right? It's a longitudinal wave, like we had said. It does have to travel through a medium, can't travel through space. So you can set up a vacuum chamber. I don't have the equipment to, but if you set up a vacuum chamber with a bell ringing in it, and then you pull the air out of the vacuum chamber, you can't hear the ringing anymore because there's nothing to transmit the sound, right? Sound has to travel through something. It has to travel through a medium. It doesn't necessarily have to travel through air. It has to travel through a medium. So it can travel through air. It can travel through a liquid. It can travel through a solid. It will definitely change based on what it's traveling through. But if there's no medium, there's no sound. The speed of sound also changes depending on what it's going through. The more dense the material is, the less each molecule has to travel, right? So when I'm moving through air, there's a little bit of space there. So you have molecule, boom, bump into molecule, and there's a collision, and then boom, bump into the next molecule, and there's some space there. So it doesn't travel all that fast through air. Through something like steel, the amount that they're going to vibrate is much smaller, so boom, 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 and that goes much, much faster. If you imagine dominoes, if you spread them really far apart, they're going to go, but they're going to go slower. If they're much closer together but far enough, they're going to go faster. I think that's how dominoes work, right? I don't know. I haven't played at dominoes a lot. Right, but 340 meters per second, that's one you're going to want to know. Write that down, right, because we'll do some calculations off of that. In water, it's 4 times faster. And in steel, it's 12 times faster, right? So if it also dissipates less in steel. So that's one of the reasons you can hear a train coming through the train tracks long before you can hear it coming through the air. Not only is it getting through there faster, but in air, that sound's going to spread out in all directions. But in steel, it's locked in the steel, and so it's going to go down the steel and just lose a little bit along the way. So it kind of keeps it focused. Yeah, the relation. Oh, I already talked about that. Yeah, I forgot. Hopefully, you can figure out that relationship since I just said it. Right, the more dense it is, the faster it goes. Decibels or loudness, right? The way we register that is with decibels. It's based off sensation, and it's a logarithmic scale. So every 10 on a decibel is 10 times louder. So 20, 0 is the threshold of hearing, 10 is 10 times louder than 0, 20 is 100 times louder than 0. So it gets louder significantly quicker, right? 10 and 20, that's 10 times different. 30 is then 1,000 times louder, right? So it gets 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, right? So it gets pretty bad, or significantly louder as we get up on those. So they talk about football stadiums and stuff. Their records are usually in the 100 to 110 decibels, and that is very loud, threshold of pain kind of stuff. And this we will hold off to until tomorrow, because then we get into Doppler effect and that kind of stuff. So anyway, go ahead and work the problems that I've got on here for tomorrow, and we'll talk about those tomorrow.